Hi, my name's Sam Stone, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make drum and bass bangers like Boo. So, Boo is a drum and bass producer who's absolutely blown up in recent years, and whilst his track Badder Dan has absolutely launched him into the mainstream, today we're going to be taking a look at how to make tracks on the heavier side of his arsenal. Now, if you want to get the project files for this video, as well as samples and presets, exclusive tutorials, dubs and more, make sure you check the top link in the description. But without any further ado, let's jump into FL. Right, so as you can see, here we are inside of FL Studio, as always. Now, the first part of the track we're going to make today is the drums for the drop. Now, I found that all of Boo's drums often sound pretty hip-hop inspired. They've all got kind of this very low-end focus, not very clicky kick drum, and then he's often got these kind of hip-hop 808 style claps, and then just these hip-hop style hats often as well, but they're a bit more on the D&B side. Now, as you can see here, I've just grabbed this kick sample. Nice thuddy low end. Next up we need a hat, so I'm just going to drag this in here. This is the hat I decided to use. And then if we just drag our clap in as well, then we've got basically a complete drum kit. Now this is the clap I went for. Nice hip hop style clap. And let's make them all a nice red colour. So we've got our drums. Now it's time to make a basic drum beat. So Boo never goes too complicated with his drum beats. So I reckon we can do something nice and simple like this. He always has the kick on the 1 and the and of 3. So we're going to do the same thing, and we can just duplicate these out here just to make it a bit longer. Now I'm just going to turn the decay down on the kick, and then we can get to doing some basic mixing, because as you can hear, whilst the drums sound kind of like his drums, they're pretty boring at the moment. And then I've just got saturation knob on the drum bus, so we can just turn this up a bit just to get some saturation going. And there you go, we've got a basic drum beat in the style of Boo. Then we're just going to do some basic EQing and effects, so let's grab some reverb for the clap. Now we don't want to go too crazy on this, so we're going to make everything pretty short, pretty small. I reckon that sounds decent, and now we can grab some distortion. So let's grab our trusty friend Isotope Trash 2, but you can use any distortion for this. This is just my preferred one. Let's go with clip control as often. Turn these down so it's not super loud. And then because that's brought out the reverb a bit more, I'm just going to turn that down. And there you go, we've got a very basic but decent drum beat in the style of Boo. Next up, let's move on to the bass in the drop. So for today's video, we're going to be making two different kind of basses. The first one is kind of a short rhythmic type bass, and the second one is a longer bass. These are inspired by his track Nan Slapper. So here we are inside of Serum. Now the first thing we're going to do, turn this down -2 octaves and turn the random down, because we barely ever want the random on. Then we're going to go into digital. We're going to go all the way down to this Tigra wavetable. We can turn the level down because we're going to be assigning LFO1 to the level, and let's set this to 1/8, and then we can make an LFO shape just like this. And then we're going to turn up the wavetable position, so we're going to have it at about 81. I found works well. And you can already hear it sounding kind of grotty just with this wavetable. And then we're going to turn on the sub, turn the level all the way down and turn it down 2 octaves. And we can assign LFO1 to it, but we only want to have it modulating at about 40, let's say. And it's not doing too much at the moment, but it will when we add the distortion. Then we're going to turn on the noise, turn this down and assign LFO1. And then we can just turn this down to 23. And then next up, we're going to turn on oscillator B, turn this down 2 octaves, and then we can assign the BS2 acid wavetable, turn down the random, and turn the level all the way down. And we're not actually going to be assigning LFO1 to this, we're just using oscillator B for the FM. And then we can turn the wavetable position all the way up to 82. And obviously, because we don't have the FM on at the moment, it's not going to be doing anything. So let's set this to FM from B. And we can turn this up to 36% to get some nice FM going. Now, it sounds alright, but what we can do here is we can turn this to Bend Plus and turn it all the way up. And next up, we're going to turn on the filter. We can leave it on MG Low 12 on the default. We're just going to assign the cutoff to it and just literally leave it where it is. Now that's everything we're going to do here, so let's hop into the effects. So first of all, we're going to turn on hyperdimension, turn the mix down, turn the size down, and we can turn the mix up on the dimension section a bit, just to get some stereo going. Next up, we can turn on the distortion. We're going to set this to hard clip, and we can turn the drive up to about here, and we're going to assign LFO1 to it, and we can pull that back to about here. You've got some nice distortion going. Next up, we're going to turn on the phaser. We can turn down every setting, except then we're going to turn the frequency up to 270. Next up, we can turn on the compressor just for a bit of gain. Finally, we're just going to grab an EQ. We're going to take the top end here, assign LFO1 to it, but we only want it going one way, so we can hold Alt and Shift, click, and then we can drag this back to about here. Just for a little bit of a top end boost. And yeah, it's really as simple as that in terms of what's going on in Serum. So let's take a look at what effects we need to add in the mixer to get this sounding proper. So first of all, I've just added some reverb. As you can see, we've got the decay, the size and the diffusion all the way down. We've turned up the low cut and turned down the high cut a bit. And then we've just blended in a bit of the wet level. And it just makes it sound a bit more roomy, gives it a bit more stereo width. So next up, I've got one of my favorite plugins to use on basses, Effector. We've got this set to the phaser mode. Now, if you're using Effector, make sure you've got the bypass turned off because otherwise it won't work. And we've just got it set to this setting here. And also I should mention that you want to turn down the gain a bit because this plugin can make everything really loud. So I've just turned it down a bit. And then after Effector, we've got Fruity Fast Distort, a pretty decent distortion plugin built into FL Studio. And you can see all the settings here. You want to make sure it's on A setting for this. And it really just drives it, makes it nice and punchy. After that, we've got another Effector. This one's very subtle, and as you can see here on the mix knob, it's turned way down. And it's doing a little bit, but not too much. It's just adding kind of a finishing touch. And then I've just got an EQ for a low end cut, because we're going to be layering a sub bass underneath this. And of course, an important thing to note is you want to make sure you kick sidechain to the bass. So I'm just going to do that now. Sidechain it there. And then let's grab Fruity Limiter, go on to compression, turn the ratio up and the threshold down somewhere around there. That's usually where it is, and we can fine tune it a bit more when we've got a bass pattern going. So that was the first bass. Now it's time to go on to the second bass. Now then, what we can actually do for this is if we clone our first bass, then we can just make some small modifications to it and we can get a really cool second bass sound. So here we are inside of a cloned version of the first bass. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to delete this point by double clicking. We can just drag that over to there, and then we're going to set this to envelope mode. And as you can hear, it gives us this nice long bass. Now, we're not actually going to use LFO1 for the level of oscillator 1. We're going to use a new LFO. So if we right click on this and click remove all modulators, you can hear you can't hear oscillator A anymore. So we're going to go on to LFO2. We can set this to trigger mode and set it to 1/16th note. We can just make an LFO shape just like this. And then we can just assign that to the level. You can hear it's giving us this kind of glitchy sound. It's quite cool. And then if we go on to LFO3, we can keep this original shape mostly, but we're just going to drag that down a touch and set this to trigger mode. And again, set it to 1/16th note. And then we can drag it onto the fine tune of oscillators A and B. And then we can set it to 49 on oscillator A and 70 on oscillator B, just for a bit of pitch modulation. And then finally, if we go into the effects section, we can assign LFO3 to the frequency knob in the phaser, and we can drag it right down. And then one last final touch, just to make the bass sound extremely gritty, is we're going to turn the phase down on oscillator A. And you can hear it just cuts through and punches through the mix so much more. And the effects for this bass are actually almost identical to the other bass. So if we just duplicate the mixer track over, and then the only thing we need to change is Effector. And all I've done is slightly move the settings in Effector, and it gives us this sound. And then now that we've got our two basses, we can start to program in a basic bass pattern. So I think we're going to have this bass at the start. And we can have a slight offset like I just added. Just drag this pattern into here. Let's have it down here. And then we're going to take our long bass. Start it on the 4th note. Duplicate that and duplicate the long note, and I think we can move this up a semitone just to add some variation. Now obviously, even though these basses are cool, we put a low cut on them, so we need to add in a sub bass. So we're just going to use Serum, going to load up basic shapes, turn down the random, and we're going to just modify the shape like this, and we're going to have that on 37. And then let's turn this down 2 octaves. And you get this nice thick sine sub bass, and we're just going to assign this to track 7. Now let's name these bass 1, bass 2, sub bass. Now we've got this one long note sub which we can put in on the same notes as the long bass, and we're just going to duplicate this, turn the level all the way down and assign LFO 1. Let's drag it back, and we can just copy this LFO shape that we've got on the first bass. Now it's on 1/8, so we're going to copy that and have a similar shape. So let's set it to 1/8, and we can do something like this. We don't need to be as strict with the sub, and I often find that if you have a bit of a longer note with a sub, it can work better. And then we can just come in here, press Command C, Command V them, and copy them into there. Now this sounds good, but of course we just need to sidechain the kick to the sub bass because we don't want them interfering. And there you go, you've got a basic drop in the style of Boo. Now let's add some intro effects. Now if you listen to Boo's track Nan Slapper, one thing he likes is in the intro he's got a lot of rave inspired sounds. So I've just grabbed this Rave Stab, and we're just going to make a pattern with this. Check what note we're on. We're using D sharp or E flat. So let's make a new pattern. And because this sample's in F sharp, I've just turned it down 6 semitones or 600 cents, as you can see in the top left corner there. And that just means that when I play a C in the piano roll, the note being played is actually a C and not an F sharp. And now we can just go in and make a basic pattern with these Rave Stabs. And let's just duplicate this, and then you can see we've got a nice pattern here for the build-up / intro section. And then we can take this main hat and we're just going to make it unique, and we can drag it over to the start here and just make a pattern just like this. Just make it a bit quieter. We can add some reverb on. So let's use Fruity Reverb, just because everyone has this plugin if they're using FL. If not, you can just use another reverb. And you want to make it quite reverby. Let's turn down the size and the diffusion. I'm going to turn down the wet a bit and just duplicate them along again. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy the drums we've got in the drop. So select them all, just copy them over to here. And then I'm just going to delete them here because that's just the pre-drop bit. Except actually we can leave a clap in there for the pre-drop. So what we can do is we can go onto the drum bus. We're just going to add a Fruity Love filter on here. Turn down the resonance, turn up the cutoff, and then we're just going to make an automation clip which can go at the top of the drum bus here. Now this is going to be filtering all of the drums in the build-up. We're just going to have this just coming in from here. Let's make it as long as the build-up. And then for this last bit of the build-up, we're going to get rid of these kicks. We're just going to cut that bit off, and we can click and drag this along. And just make it double time at the end as well here. Now finally, I'm just going to turn all of these down, and then we just need one more effect just to make the drums sound more interesting. So we can select the whole thing, go onto the drum bus, and we're just going to add some reverb. Now let's make this wet all the way up and turn down the dry a bit. Let's get quite a big low cut on because it's on the kick a bit. Turn the size up a bit and decay up a bit. But don't worry, that sounds terrible. So we're going to automate the mix knob here, and then we can make a shape just like this, just filtering down into the pre-drop bit here. And then it should sound a bit like this. Now what we're going to do here is just a bit of structure, and we're just going to cut that off, and then we can also add some effects to the Rave Stab, because at the moment there's a lot of low end on it that we don't want. So I'm just going to grab an EQ and just cut off some of this low end, and then let's add some reverb. And then the final step is we want to find a vocal for this. Now I've just got this generic splice vocal, but it's basically a demonstration as a kind of placeholder, and you can get your own better vocals than this. So at the moment you can see it's 95 BPM, or if we treat that as double time, it's 190. So let's type in 190 just here, and you can see it's stretched to 8 bars. And then we can just add some effects to these vocals. So let's first of all grab an EQ for getting rid of unwanted low end.
In my bag, really in my bag. Happy just for life and I'm happy where I'm at.
Nothing too complicated, and let's just grab a bit of reverb. You can use whatever your preferred reverb plugin is for this. Turn down the mix
in
a bit.
my bag, really in my bag. Happy just for life and I'm happy where I'm at.
And then what we can do here is we can sidechain the kick to these vocals just for this build up bit, just because I find it adds a cool pumping effect. And then because there's this gap at the end, what we can do is we can experiment with doubling this bit.
I'm making this shit clear, this shit clear.
And then actually what we can do, make this unique and try it down an octave. Let's see how this sounds.
I'm making this shit clear.
And let's just duplicate this along so we've got a bit of a longer drop demo. And what we can do here, because it sounds cool going into the drop, but I reckon we can add something else just to spice it up a bit. So we're going to take both of these basses and we're going to route them to one channel. And then what we can do on here is we can set up a reverb sweep. So we get Fruity Reverb 2, turn down early reflections, turn the wet all the way down, turn the decay all the way up. And then you can see these gaps in the MIDI. And we're just going to draw a loop along there and a bit longer as well. And then if we go back into Fruity Reverb 2, make an automation clip. Let's make a channel for it just here. Make a shape like that. And then when we go into the drop, we'll have something that fills the gaps in. This might be too much, but let's have a look.
I'm making this shit clear.
Yeah, so we're going to turn this down a bit and let's duplicate it over to here. And yeah, you've got a basic track here which you could build something from fairly easily in the style of Boo. Obviously, if you're going to release this, switch it up a bit because it's cool to take inspiration from artists, but don't copy them directly. If you've been following along, you should have something like this.
In my bag, really in my bag. Happy just for life and I'm happy where I'm at. Let me celebrate while here. We made it out the year. I'm living, yeah, my life. I'm making this shit clear. In my bag, really in my bag. Happy just for life and I'm happy where I'm at. Let me celebrate while here. We made it out the year. I'm living, yeah, my life. I'm making this shit clear.
Now, if you want to grab this project file, make sure you check out the top link in the description where you'll be able to download it. As always, if you found this video useful, please leave a like and subscribe and leave a comment for what videos you want to see next time. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.